Please get your notes on Neo. Make sure that you have it in your Notability. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Notability. Okay. Um, look at that. I already have this highlighted. That's the first thing we're going to do. So the first thing we need to do is look at the vocabulary. There are 2 vocabulary words that we're going to go over before going into what the Pythagorean theorem is. Okay. So the Pythagorean theorem is going to be something that you hear in 8th grade and in high school a lot. It's going to be whenever we have right triangles, it's going to help us finding out the side lengths. So here, let's look at the vocabulary. One of the vocabulary words we're going to be talking about is the legs of a right triangle. Okay, so the legs are always going to be the 2 shorter or smaller sides of the right triangle. And first thing I want you to do is to highlight this right here. They always form the right angle. So if I were to have a right triangle, right, I'd have a right triangle right here. That was failure. Let me zoom in really quick, draw a little square, because a square tells us that we have a right triangle. Okay, and I'm just going to make this red. Okay, so a right triangle, it's always going to be the 2 shorter sides, and they always form the right angle. So here, this is a leg, and this is a leg. These 2 form the right angle, and this is right here. I'll write in pink. This right here means a 90-degree angle or a right triangle. Okay, so right here that tells us that we have a right triangle. The legs are always going to be the 2 smaller and shorter sides that create the right triangle. Okay, now the next word we're going to be talking about is hypotenuse. Okay, I'd like you to say the word hypotenuse. Then the hypotenuse is always going to be on the opposite side or across from the right angle. So right here we have the right angle right here, right? In the pink, the hypotenuse is always going to be across. So actually I'm going to go down to this picture. And it's always going to be the longest side of the right triangle. So right here, this is the hypotenuse. Say hello to my little friend, hypotenuse. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and actually turn my iPad. So let me make sure I'm right. Hypotenuse, yeah. Hypotenuse. So that's our hypotenuse, and over here we have our legs, right? The 2 sides that create the right triangle. This is a leg. This is another leg. Okay. And right here we have a right triangle. Okay. So that tells us that we have a right angle. So the Pythagorean theorem is going to be when we have legs squared. So one of the red, leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. So leg squared, that's in red, plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. So those are the side lengths that we're talking about using the vocabulary word we just gave you. It's also similar to when we had small squared plus medium squared equals large squared. Okay. Now, in high school, you're going to be seeing it like this. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And A, B, and C are just representing different sides of the triangle. C is always going to be the hypotenuse. Okay, so right now we're teaching you just to learn leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. Now I know one of the things that you're going to be struggling with is figuring out which side is the leg and which side is the hypotenuse, which side is the shorter side and which side is the along this side, or opposite from the right angle. Now, in order to help you always find the legs and differentiate from the hypotenuse, we're going to teach you this phrase. To find the legs, okay, what you need to do is you're going to need to find the crotch. So when you have two legs, right, there's the crotch. Now, some of you guys might think that's funny, but it's actually going to help us learn. Right here, we're going to draw a person. If I draw a person, that means that these two are the legs. We have 6 and 8. Those are the legs. And guess what? The third length is going to be the hypotenuse, or the long side. And notice that it's across, right? It's across from our right angle right here. Okay? So that's going to help us. So we have leg squared. Oh, and this, I just copied this and I cut it. So right here we have leg squared, and I'm actually going to make this smaller. Whoa, okay. Let's actually just copy that. Okay, so one of the legs, we already talked about it, was once we draw the person, we can find the crotch, and we can find the legs. 6 squared plus 8 squared equals, we don't know the hypotenuse, so we're going to call it x, and it actually says x right here. And I'm just going to find out what's 6 squared. 6 squared is 6 times 6, so 36 plus 8 squared, which is 8 times 8, 64, equals x squared. All right, let's add these two together. We get 100 equals x squared. And to get x by itself, like we have been doing the whole time, we need to do the opposite. So how can we undo as x squared? We can find the square root, right? The square root of x squared will get rid of the squared, and it's going to tell us that x equals the square root of 100 is 10, because 10 times 10 is 100. So x right here equals 10. So we know that the hypotenuse here, this is 10. Okay? And we just found the missing side length of this right triangle. We're going to do the same thing with the second one. We're going to find the missing length of this right triangle. In order to do that, we need to find the crotch. Here are our legs, 16 and x. Okay, so we have 16 squared. Oh, let's paste this. 16 squared plus x squared equals, the hypotenuse right here is 20. So plus 20 squared. Check your calculator. 16 squared is 256. Plus x squared equals 20 squared is 400. We'll get x by itself. So in order to get x by itself, I need to subtract 256 minus 256. X squared equals 256 400 minus 256 is 144. To get x by itself, I need to find a square root, right? Because that will eliminate the squared. And x equals the square root of 144. Oh, what happened here? Is 12. So our missing side length is 12. That means that right here, this is 12. Okay? All right, our last but not least, we'll go ahead and find this. We need to draw our person. So here are our legs, 8 and x. Our hypotenuse is going to be 12. So leg squared, 8 squared plus x squared equals 12 squared. 8 squared is 8 times 8, which is 64, plus x squared equals 12 squared, which is 144. Subtract 64 from both sides. X squared equals 80. And here we need to find a square root, and x equals, there isn't a perfect square root. If we plug it into the calculator, we get 8.9442. So our answer here is about 8.9. So our missing side length is 8.9 right here. And that's an estimate. Okay. If you have any questions, make sure you save them for class.